Okay, great. Hi, Latinos and clinical research community. Sorry for the delay. We have some technical issues, but we're excited to be here now. We're excited to start. And I'd like to introduce our guest this month, which is Dr. Wildredo Jesus-Monge. And thank you for being with us today, and thank you for taking some time to be on our LICR webinar. Yeah, and so usually
Thank
what
you
we
very
like to
much.
get started is just kind of have you give us a little background about yourself, where you started in research, what you're doing, your experience.
Thank you very much. Actually, thank you very much for the opportunity of of having me and of sharing our experiences. I know that uh, you, as a team and on your endeavors, you are very experienced, and ha- and I'm happy to uh, be here with you. So I am Dr. Wilfredo de Jesus-Monge. Uh, I was born I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and since I have been studying, I have always loved science, specifically biology. And as I move on my elementary and junior and high school, it turned to me like I want to contribute in medicine, but scientifically. So I start having a summer experience on my year before being a senior in high school. I was at the University of Puerto Rico School of Medicine, in uh, which actually it was my first clinical research experience because I was working a with a human GI tissues. And then I moved into the University of Puerto Rico, uh, at Rio Piedras, where I earned a bachelor degree in biology. And at that time, I continued doing a cancer research. So I did research on melanoma, and I spent my time at the Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, uh, in which I did research on addiction. Uh, I then moved to the University of Puerto Rico School of Medicine to study my medical degree uh, with a research pathway. So I spent additional time conducting a clinical research, which was uh, mainly on GI research. At the same time, I went to the National Institute of Health, in which I did um, a summer research experience. I did research in arthritis in an animal model. Plus, while I was studying medical school, I did a 1 month internal medicine clerkship at the NIH. And at that point, I had the opportunity to get into contact with actual clinical trials because at the Internal Medicine Service, we provided support to clinical research participants and investigators at the NIH Clinical Center. I moved on to have an internal medicine internship, and I completed a postdoctoral Master of Science in Clinical Research at the University of Puerto Rico, too. At that point, I did research on colorectal cancer, also clinical research. Eh, and I moved into do a postdoctoral research fellowship at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, in which I did pancreatic cancer research. And that was the first opportunity in which I had to actually to contribute conducting clinical trials. So I was assistant to the clinical research coordinator. Uh, and it was an interesting experience because it was on pancreatic cancer. So I did research in the lab with an animal model of pancreatic cancer, and independently, but at the same time, I did clinical trials on pancreatic cancer. And then I came back here to Puerto Rico and have been in academia. I was in an independent clinical research site. I was in a hospital, so I had experience conducting clinical trials in hospital. The therapeutic areas of my research at the hospital was pediatric GI, pediatric oncology, rheumatoid arthritis, COVID-19, Zika virus. So it was a very broad experience at the hospital based. And now currently, while I was in academia, I designed a um, a bioequivalence study as well. And after finishing uh, my experience at the hospital, now I'm currently clinical research director at the Puerto Rico Consortium for Clinical Investigation, and I am also chief medical officer at the Puerto Rico uh, Science, Technology, and Research Trust, and assistant research professor at Honorem San Juan Bautista School of Medicine. So currently, in my current job, I am investigator in obesity and obesity clinical trials and COVID-19, flu A/B, and RSV uh, medical diagnostics test. Uh, so my experience on clinical trials, I have occupied as I start as a student, as a clinical research coordinator assistant. I have been a rater, chair of committee, clinical research coordinator, a sub-investigator, principal investigator. So I have gone through many of the typical roles in a clinical research site.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow, what an
That's a
impressive
very
background.
well-rounded, diverse background. I think you've tapped
Yes.
every parts of the industry that you can have worked in. You've worked in, right?
That's
Yeah,
very
that's
amazing.
amazing. That journey. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very impressive. And in
Well,
addition to that, I saw that you won the award of the Researcher of the Year. So no wonder why.
ah, oh, I I I apologize if I don't understood well, but I have seems audio problems in terms of the signal and internet. But yes, I earned the Clinical Researcher of the Year award by Pharma Times magazine in 2023. That is a that is a competition. That is an annual competition in which it starts with an exam that you complete, and to those that finish the exam, they are asked to write an essay on a particular topic, and then they choose the finalists to go to the to in person in front of a judge panel and answer the question of interest, and then they choose the a winner, and thank God it was me at that time. And um, for me it was a very nice experience because it got me the opportunity to interact with other clinical researchers and clinical trials professionals. Even during the awards night, I sat in the table a with other partners in clinical research industry that we network, and we did connections, and we continue working afterwards.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
That's Please go ahead, Judy.
No, go ahead. I think there's a delay on my end and your end, but go ahead.
Yeah, it is. It is a delay on our end. Sorry. So I mean, you have quite an impressive background. I don't think we have come across with an older uh, doctor with such an impressive background. Dr. Wilfredo is just quite amazing because not always people have the interest on research since the very beginning, right? The majority of us stumble in it, but it's clearly not the case on your on your experience. And I think is very also empowering, and is also motivating for other doctors out there, because oftentimes they have wrong ideas about what research is. The majority of doctors, correct me if I'm wrong, when they experience research in the university, is mostly the academic kind of research, academia, right? Which is totally different with clinical trials when it comes to the industry. And to that point, I will very much like if you explain all the doctors out there what is the main difference from your perspective, and how that has shaped your career.
Which is the, I'm sorry, I did not got to listen well the last part of your question.
Oh yeah, your perspective on the difference in between the academia and the clinical trials, like industry kind of clinical trials, and how
Okay.
that has shaped your career and changed your perspective, right? Because as I was mentioning, in the university, doctors get to experience academic kind of research, and they think that's all that is, right? But when they experience the clinical trials, with a different, like a private kind of clinical trials, is completely different world. So how does that shape your career and change your perspective about it?
Yes. Actually, is very very different. It's kind of being more kind of similar recently, because many academic institutions are conducting more. It's it's more prevalent for academic institutions to conduct industry clinical trials, but the the biggest difference is the setting. For example, in academia, if you do clinical research, uh, besides industry sponsored, where it's mainly investigator initiated, the investigator wrote the protocol and conduct the study. Usually, the institution has its own clinical research center with its own personnel, with its own equipment, because it's funded somehow, either privately or with federal or any government funding. So the life of a clinical research investigator, having those I would say those commodities or comfortable zone, is is nice, is good. But then if you do clinical trials in an independent clinical eh, research site, in which the infrastructures and the workforce, mainly many is principal investigators who are owners of their own clinical research site. So they are not just the investigator, they are also the owner, the CEO, the one that takes care of the business going on. So it may add additional stressors to the investigator. And I would say that academia is kind of a safe environment when you are doing clinical trials in the community, in an independent clinical research site, either private or nonprofit. That's when you prove yourself and better how clinical research investigator you are, because you deal with those stressors that are important in clinical research. In the academia, you may have in your institution a big office of and staff that works on contracting, budgeting, billing. In the independent clinical research side, is usually the investigator who is the owner who does that also. So it adds additional skills to work with. And yes, they are very they're very different. Yes, I agree. Doing clinical trials in the academia versus independently.
Okay, so and then when you compare it to what, like when you were in university, discovering the research world, how that differ from the industry clinical research?
You mean a research like academic research versus industry research?
Yeah, so like when you are writing those all those documents and obviously proving all the research that you're doing against to what the industry does.
Mm-hmm. Well, it the investigator and the staff should understand that, for example, if you are in academia and you can write your own protocol, yes, you can do it, and then you submit it to the IRB, you amend it as you wish. But when it's an industry protocol, it's not, I mean, investigators have a say in the protocol, because that's why the investigator meetings are, in which you meet uh, the principal investigator of the whole study from the sponsor side. Uh, but it's more like, okay, this is the protocol, you need to follow it, and do do no protocol deviations. So the investigator should understand that okay, you may, if you wrote the protocol, you can amend it as you wish, but when you do an industry sponsored protocol, yeah, the protocol is already written, the study is already designed, but protocol amendments would come from the sponsor side mainly. So it's a matter of the investigator to accept that a difference in that sense.
Doctor, have you on this research that you have done, have you created a protocol like from zero to actually being on the to use it in the study?
You mean I written myself?
Like
Yeah, I mean
investigator
with
initiated.
somebody.
Oh,
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Well, I wrote uh, a bioequivalence clinical study. It was the the first time I did, and it's very challenging because you need to know the bioequivalence methods, which is kind of different to the typical to the typical clinical trial. But I have I have wrote other I have written other protocols, not like clinical trial specifically, but for other clinical research studies, like for example, I have one on identifying a cancer risk prevention strategies uh, and risk factors in Puerto Rico, and that has been collecting data. I mean, it has been open for the last 6 years, and it has been transitioning into sub-studies. The a recent one was a perception and trust questionnaire on the community to learn about the trust and perception of the application of artificial intelligence into cancer prevention, risk factors, and screening practices. And it was very revealing. It was administered this questionnaire to 385 participants in Puerto Rico. And in summary, many of them are knowledgeable about artificial intelligence. They are interested in the application of artificial intelligence into cancer risk factors, prevention, and screening. But definitely they want most of them want regulation on artificial intelligence, and they want transparency. They want to know when artificial intelligence is used in their healthcare. So in that sense, I have been and there. So in that sense, I have been able to do both clinical trials and surveys to to uh, the community and participants. I have done various clinical research types.
Well, like I say, your experience is definitely very impressive. I mean, the more we ask, the more we get. You have first of all, thank you so much for everything you have done and where everything you're doing. It's not. I mean, like I mentioned before, not every day you come across with a doctor like yourself with so much experience and with Latino background, right? Which is it makes me
Thank you
proud.
very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything you have done, doctor.
Yeah, thank you, doctor. I had a question about the oncology.
Sure, yes.
So we have a new director of CBER here, Prasad, and he's been somewhat critical about cancer outcomes, particularly surrogate endpoints as it pertains to RECIST criteria. I'm not sure how you feel about this in regards to colon cancer. I know in his book he mentioned a few of the surrogate endpoints that he would hope wouldn't be used, which to me it signals that it would be harder to get approval for these therapeutics now. Do you think that's going to impact you in your research?
Um, what do you refer with a surrogate endpoints? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so basically, like, instead of looking at overall survival rates, which is harder, the paradigm in research has been to look at tumor shrinkage and partial response. And this
Okay.
new head of CBER, I mean, he just joined a month ago, but he's already come out and said a few times on podcasts that he does not think that's the right paradigm to have when it comes to analyzing cancer submissions to the FDA. So I mean, a lot of people in the cancer community are freaking out because it's going to be harder to get drugs approved under this
Okay,
new
considering
regime. I don't know what
surrogate
you feel. Yeah.
outcomes.
Hmm.
Um, well, I mean, I would I would guess it will take longer to get results. Yeah, I think those are variables to look for as well. Uh, at the end, you want to save life, you want to prolong life. So instead, I mean, so in terms of survival, uh, outcomes and others, quality of life, I think they are very important. Tumor shrinkage, it's important too. But you care for the patient, mainly. So I think both are good and important variables to look at in cancer. But yeah, if you look into those surrogate outcomes, it may take longer. Yeah, I would
Yeah, that's
say.
what their argument is, that they want to drive down costs. This entire administration's thesis is basically to drive down costs, but it impacts even the nuanced oncology space and the biologics too. But this guy wrote an entire book on his thesis, which I've been reading these past few days, and I mean, he's very aggressive when it comes to this. So I was just, as soon as I heard colon cancer, I was going to ask you this, but I was saving it. And a little bit easier of a question would be if you want to talk to us about clinical Leah.
Clinically, yes, clinically. Um, I have, as I said, I have been doing clinical research, but I got let's say, an interest also in entrepreneurship. So clinical, so in that sense, honestly, it's a startup in development. So I went into um, an a business idea incubator, which is at the Puerto Rico Research Technology and Science Technology and Research Trust. Before I start working here, I went to a business idea incubator, which is called Fase Uno, and I wanted to. I have always been interested in clinical research education to the public. And I look at the needs of the patients and the needs of the sites, and that's how I met Judy. Uh, so so I so I was asking clinical research sites, uh, professionals, about which are their needs on clinical research, education, and on technology. And I also asked the community uh, about clinical research education. And I end up learning that most of 98% of the population in Puerto Rico, which is the one I impacted, they want to learn about clinical research. And and at the same time, almost all clinical research professionals I spoke to, both in the mainland US and in Puerto Rico, they understood, they thought that clinical research education to the population is very important. So I did the that clinical research education startup initiative, and I call it Clinicalea. Clinicalea is fun because that's a name that it just popped in my mind while I was sleeping. So it did not has a particular meaning. So I did that. Honestly, it's still in development. I have not moved much forward on it, but that's part of my entrepreneurship side and feeling on clinical research. Yeah, at least I keep open the LinkedIn account on Clinicalia, and I share there many of your posts. So I repost them in my Clinicalia LinkedIn site. So I shared, I repost Latinos in clinical research post. So yeah, that is my entrepreneurship side of clinical research, but still in development, honestly.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And so on that regards, what would you say to the professionals out there, the Latinos that are experienced to look for information about research, but they don't understand quite well what this world has to offer to them? What would you say to those new minds or new professionals that have interest in research?
Okay. I would say, let's say, for example, to those who are in school, in college, get experience, volunteer. You can volunteer at your academic institution doing clinical research. You can talk even to an independent clinical research site and say, I want to volunteer, I want to shadow, I want to learn. And, it's a matter of it's a matter of communication. And as you know, a brilliant, curious minds and hands are always needed in clinical research. So they can help a lot in the operations of a clinical research site at the same time as they learn about clinical research, because they can read, but when you actually work in the field with, especially with the clinical research coordinator, who is the staff person that runs the show mainly. So that's how they learn a lot. And actually, an interest of mine is mentorship. So I have mentored over 40 students, being undergrad students, college students, physicians in training, physicians in practice. So they always look for opportunities to learn, and for those professionals, is I know they may be experts in the clinical area, but at the same time, there are many clinical research and learning opportunities. There are courses, there are certifications, there are even academic degrees on clinical research. Or just step into a clinical research site and say, I am a physician, I have this patient population, and I want to conduct clinical trials. And they can learn on the run as well. Plus, of course, first being trained on GCP, being trained on the protocol and IRB regulations. So it's a matter of seeking the source of information on clinical research and and, and get the experience.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, and I think the fact that you have, like Monica mentioned, all the different background, you went different areas in clinical research to get to where you're at right now. A lot of people who are watching this or will watch this probably, maybe went into academic, maybe went to NIH, maybe went to something else, and can transition into different areas like you if they were more into the science background and then decide to do clinical trials or want to get into that space in the future. So I think it's very important that we share your experience and your story with others so people understand that those skills you can transition them right into the different areas, and kind of what you did. You've worked in various different areas of research, with some of us just work in clinical trials and we don't have that academic and age experience. So you're very well-rounded and very experienced in different areas. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for the opportunity. I admire you all. I follow you all. So I'm very happy. I have a lot of I I learn with you as well. So thank you very much to
Wow, that's
US
a huge
Latinos in
compliment.
Clinical Research.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That's a huge compliment. We have to invite you to the Safe Our Sites conference so you can share more directly with other investigators. I'm sure everybody will be interested in the path. And I also love the fact that you, like I mentioned before, that you started in such a young age with the interest on science, because that also translates to our communities, right? Many kids or many young professionals don't even know how to start or where to start, and having this video available could help them to get motivated and inspired by your path or your education. And I mean, your education is also mind blowing. Like, to make me feel I have done much when I hear all background, all that education experience, being very, very into research world and investing to get to know somebody like you. I hope more doctors like take the path of research, because it's very needed more now, more than ever, right? And having those opportunities out there. And now, if we think about also the AI, it is putting an additional layer there, and you're very progressive. You're already investigating on that regards. So, to that point, what is your experience with AI on the clinical research on this now? I mean, nowadays, right?
I'm sorry if I missed the last part of your question. You're asking me about my experience with AI in clinical research? Yes? Okay. It's uh, interesting because, with I have always had questions, a scientific mind. And with the start of AI, it start with ChatGPT. I mean, mainly, and it was in the early versions of ChatGPT in which I asked myself, can artificial intelligence be a good advisor on clinical research topics and regulations and situations? And I actually did a poster presentation on that. I asked questions to AI and about particular situations in clinical research. Protocol deviation, what to do when you have a protocol deviation, How about assenting a minor? That kind of of situations in which an investigator would seek counseling advice. And I asked those questions, and I can say that the responses were very accurate. Of course, I did a questioning to AI, but I need the answer. But I also know the answers based on my experience as a clinical researcher. So when I look into the answers that, in this case, a ChatGPT provided to those situations and to those daily clinical research live questions, the answer and the advice were kind of good. So it was a preliminary analysis I did just out of my curiosity, but it was like maybe 2 years ago. So I would need to do again the same study. The same simple, curious study, and see if, and ask the same AI platform the same questions. And I would see if the answers are better. Hopefully, they are better than what the answers were 2 years ago. So, and yeah, a clinical AI is very helpful in clinical research. Uh, you can use it if you want to look online in a browser for information on clinical research. The browser automatically may use AI and produce an answer. But of course, those answers need to be verified and confirmed with a credible source of information. But yeah, artificial intelligence is in clinical research life. Uh, I think it was actually earlier than when we start calling it AI, actually. And it will be part of our industry, of course.
Yeah, and I wanted to share a question that came up. I know we only have so many minutes left. Thank you for giving your feedback on the AI topic. But let me go ahead and read this. How would you handle a
Sure.
situation when high degree professionals, for example, medical degree, coming from a foreign country, wants to start their journey in clinical research, but despite having the training, they consider these professionals as overqualified for clinical research roles, or they're rejected for the lack of experience?
Okay. Yeah. That is a very good question, and it actually happens frequently. Um, and I know uh, physicians, they can be so I assume, being, for example, an MD coming from a foreign country to the US, I guess, is the question. I mean, a physician, a high degree professional in a country, is as competitive and knowledgeable as any other in another country, even in the US. But of course, every country asks for the particular requisites in training. Many of them, they end up training again. Being already physicians in their country, they train again on their specialty. In the US, that happens. But to start a journey in clinical research, I would say volunteer. The If you want to start doing clinical research, start shadowing and volunteer with a clinical research coordinator, because she that is a professional that a that runs all the key parts of the study: the investigator, the participant, the sponsor, the CRO. They may be overqualified for some roles. Yes, that happens. But if you come from a foreign country and you get the experience, in this case in the US, even as a volunteer, you prove yourself that you can do clinical research in the US. And that way it will be easier to get those opportunities afterwards. It's a matter of getting the experience, and it's common. I have taught a, a, a physicians born in foreign countries that they come to Puerto Rico as part of the US to study and train. So I have seen that in person. So yeah, experience, shadowing, volunteer, prove yourself, and that way you can put together your experience as a physician with your clinical research skills.
Yeah, great advice. And I wanted to add
Yeah,
something. I am familiar with a few foreign IMGs who have been hired as pre-screeners or research assistants. I don't know if you've had that experience, but I have too, and I've heard of that. So that's another way to get entry level or volunteer. I think volunteer is probably easier because a lot of times you don't get paid. But if you do find a paid position, getting in at those entry levels and moving up.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the knowledge is always going to stay with the individual. You uh, in this case, a physician in foreign countries, they are always going to know medicine because they are physicians already. So they are very helpful in clinical research sites because they have the knowledge. And maybe they cannot practice as physicians because of those reasons that I just said, but they know medicine. So they are very good asset for clinical research sites.
They may be the best.
yeah, I totally agree.
There's a meme. There's a meme that did you guys see that meme? I gotta reshare it on LinkedIn, but it says protocol amendment per the PI's direct discretion, and then the meme is a coordinator and says, "But I'm the coordinator," meaning the coordinators are the ones doing all the work. So in reality, the best kind of coordinator would be someone with a MD background by training, which makes a lot of rational sense.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that many of these physicians, these doctors, don't know much about research again, and I think this is the best industry for any international medical graduate to join. That is going to appreciate their background as doctors, right? And I tend to have meet a lot of international medical graduates.
Sorry about that. I think she was having some technical issues with that.
Sure sounded like it.
Yeah. Well, I know we're getting pretty much to the end of our time. Is there, before we end this, is there anything else you wanted to share with the community? Anything we didn't get to say that you wanted to mention?
Well, I would say that yes, it's important to have a representation from all communities, including Latinos, both as clinical research participants and as professionals, because it's especially professionals, because participants, they they are eager to participate in clinical research studies and medical care when they look at professionals that look similar to them. It's something that has been seeing. And so, yes, it's a matter of getting opportunities to Latino clinical research professionals and, professionals in clinical medicine in different aspects to join the clinical research industry and practice, and 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 also a Latino participants to be part of clinical research. So I I believe there's a lot of education still needed to be provided to the community, but we are working on that, and I expect that the participation will increase. 38% of the U.S. population that takes medications that are users of medications are Hispanics. 38%. So, and only 5% participate in clinical trials. So they are so Latinos are an important percentage on pharmaceutical therapy consumption. So they must be increased in terms of the clinical research participation. I mean, representation from all populations. And thank you for the opportunity of having me. I really admire you all, and thank you for the opportunity. We have been talking previously about this opportunity, and finally it came today. So thank you very much. I follow you, and I always keep connected to you, especially on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for being part. Thank you for that very important information you just shared. Definitely important to keep recruiting diverse participants, including everyone in our communities. And thank you for all the work that you're doing in your community and everything going on in Puerto Rico. So thank you. And we'll definitely be in touch and hopefully talk a lot more.
Sure, yes.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.